Take this opportunity to build and run the game and see what you have. You'll notice that as the ninja walks to the right, the one thing we're really missing here is a way to control him. He just falls into this pit every time, whereas it would be really good if he could jump over the pit. So we want a way to add buttons to the screen, but we also want to see any other important information. For this we are going to use a heads-up display or HUD layer. So if you come back into your game scene and have a look at your layers, you now want to add one for your HUD. VAR layer HUD is equal to skNode. We're going to make a class for your HUD, but for now let's just make it an skNode. Okay, now let's make the new class by coming over to Layers, Add New, select Swift File. I'm going to call it Layer HUD, and also tick on any targets that you need. You know the drill by now. We're going to change this import to SpriteKit and start a class which is going to be Layer HUD. Now, unlike your other layers, this isn't going to be a subclass of layer because we don't need it to scroll or do anything special. So we can start with a skNode and build on top of that functionality. So there's two types of instance variables we're going to need. There'll be interface items such as labels and buttons, so those will be the items that you can press. Down here I'm just going to set up a basic initialization function, and of course we need to bring in a init with coder as well. For now I'm just going to use skLabel nodes for all of the buttons and also any text that we're showing on the screen. Okay, and when something changes we also need a way to update each of these labels. So we're going to add in a update method. Now I'm just going to paste in these button labels. So we're referring to the instance variable for pause button. We're setting its font to marker felt wide, font size 42, positioning it by the screen in the top right corner. The text color is going to be white. We're going to give it a little bit of transparency, so 0.8 alpha. And setting the horizontal and vertical alignment modes so it'll sit neatly in the corner. And for the Z position, I'm just going to give it 500 so that it's higher than anything else in the scene and it'll be always on top. For the text I'm just going to use two eyes to indicate a pause icon. And it's important to give your button a meaningful name so that you can refer to it later when it has been pressed. So I'm just going to call it pause button in camel case. The jump and throw buttons are added in pretty much the exact same way. Just remember to change the text and also the name of the node. Okay, so now back on your game scene, you can change your layer to be a layer HUD object. And as with all your other layers, you have to add it to the scene. Okay, so if you build and run the application now, you can see that the buttons have been added on top of everything else on the scene. In the bottom left I have a throw button, in the bottom right I have a jump button. And at the top right I have a pause button, which is a little difficult to see at the moment. The positioning of these buttons is very deliberate, so that when you're using an iPhone or an iPad, it'll be in an appropriate position to touch with your thumbs. You want the player to be comfortable when they're using your game. So right now if you were to touch one of these buttons it wouldn't do anything. In the next lesson we're going to add some functionality to these buttons.